Jessica's breath trembled. Her body nestled into the soft give of her bed. The house's silence wrapping her like a second skin. She was 28, an artist who poured her unspoken longings into charcoal and canvas. But here, alone, she let them spill into her touch. Her fingers moved with quiet intent, tracing the heat blooming beneath her skin, each stroke pulling her deeper into a private tide. The room was dim, shadows pooling in the corners, the faint glow of a lamp casting her form in soft relief. Her pulse quickened, her mind adrift in sensation, the slow build, the hum of her own desire, until a sharp creak shattered the haze. Her eyes snapped open, her heart lurching as her gaze found the doorway. Ethan stood there, her stepbrother, his frame filling the space, his face half-lit, unreadable, his eyes locked onto hers, dark and piercing, drinking in her exposed moment. Jessica froze, her hands still, her body caught in a traitor's hum, shame flooding her chest like ice. Yet beneath it, hotter, sharper, something stirred, a reckless want that curled low in her belly. The air thickened, heavy with what shouldn't be, her skin prickling under the weight of his stare. They weren't blood, she thought, the old refrain flickering through her panic. Ethan had come into her life years ago, a quiet storm in their patched-together family, his presence always tugging at the edges of her notice. She'd seen him, his broad shoulders, the way his jaw tightened under thought. But this was a new lens, forbidden, dangerous. Her breath hitched, loud in the stillness, as she shifted, tugging her shirt down, her movements slow, as if testing the space between them. His gaze didn't waver, steady, unrelenting, and it unraveled her, her thoughts a tangle of guilt and curiosity. She should speak, move, break this spell, anything to reclaim the boundary. But her limbs were heavy, her body alive, betraying her with a flush that crept up her neck, warm and damning. Ethan's silence was a presence, filling the room, and Jessica's pulse hammered, her senses sharpened to every detail: his faint scent, wood smoke and salt, the slight rise of his chest. Her mind screamed retreat, but her body leaned toward him, caught in a tide she couldn't name. She swung her legs off the bed, her bare feet hitting the cool floor, grounding her for a moment. She stood, her legs unsteady, and moved toward the door, needing to escape the heat of his eyes, the mirror they held to her own want. As she passed, her arm brushed his, a fleeting graze that burned through her like a spark. His skin was warm, solid, the contact lingering in her nerves, igniting a restless ache. She stopped, inches from him, her breath shallow, her body screaming to turn back, to feel that warmth again. Ethan didn't move, didn't speak, but his nearness was a pull, a question hanging in the air. Jessica forced herself forward, her steps carrying her into the hall, the house's shadows swallowing her. Her heart pounded, her skin humming with the memory of his gaze, his touch. The walls seemed closer, the air heavier, every creak a reminder of him behind her. She didn't look back, but she felt him, his presence a thread tugging at her core. In the bathroom, she leaned over the sink, splashing cold water on her face, her reflection a stranger's, eyes too wide, cheeks flushed with something more than shame. Her fingers gripped the porcelain, trembling, as her mind replayed the moment. His stare, the way it stripped her bare, the answering spark in her own chest. Downstairs, the kitchen offered a fragile refuge, its cool tiles a balm against her fevered thoughts. She poured water, her hands unsteady, the glass slick against her palm. Ethan appeared in the doorway, silent, his frame a quiet weight in the space. Her throat tightened, her body betraying her with a shiver as their eyes met again. His gaze softer now, but no less piercing. He moved closer, reaching for a mug, and their fingers grazed, a faint echo of before, deliberate in its slowness. The touch was electric, a silent pulse that stole her breath, her thoughts fracturing between retreat and the urge to lean into him, to let the spark catch. She turned to the sink, busying herself with dishes, her movements mechanical, but her awareness of him was a living thing, coiling tighter with every second. He stood nearby, sorting papers left on the counter, his silence louder than any words. The house was a maze of tension, its quiet amplifying every sound, his steady breath, the rustle of paper, the faint drip of the faucet. Jessica's skin burned, her mind painting forbidden images, the line of his neck, the weight of his hand, the way his eyes had held her, unflinching. Each glance was a risk, a step closer to an edge she couldn't see. She caught herself watching him, the way his fingers moved, precise, the faint crease between his brows. Her body remembered his touch, her arms still tingling where they'd brushed, and the memory fed a restless hunger, one she fought to bear. Guilt gnawed at her, sharp and familiar, but it was drowned by curiosity, by the question of what lay beyond this moment. They'd shared a house, a history, but this was new, uncharted, a secret carved in the space between. She fled upstairs later, her room a sanctuary and a cage. The door closed softly, but it couldn't shut out her thoughts. Her body still hummed, the memory of his gaze a brand on her skin, vivid as any touch. She sank onto the bed, the same bed where it began, and her fingers twitched, caught between restraint and the urge to chase that heat again. Ethan's room was down the hall, a fact that felt both thrilling and unbearable, a tether pulling at her resolve. Her mind spun, replaying every detail, the creak of the floor, the weight of his eye, the spark of his skin against hers. Sleep was a distant hope, her senses tangled in a web of want and fear. The house settled around, its creaks a quiet chorus, but Jessica was adrift, her thoughts circling back to to the moment that had cracked her open. She was teetering. She knew it, on the brink of something that could unravel, something she wasn't sure she could turn away. The silence was heavy, charged with the weight of what they'd shared, and it drew her toward a dangerous edge, one she felt herself leaning in, unable to resist. The dining room was a haven of shadow, the single lamp spilling a warm glow across the long oak table, its surface gleaming like a quiet promise. Jessica stood at its edge, her fingers brushing the wood's smooth, her body thrumming with a choice she hadn't voiced. Ethan was there across the room, his silhouette sharp in the door, his presence a pulse that had trailed her since the moment he'd caught, exposed and wild. The air was heavy with the weight of glances brushed, the unspoken spark that had burned through her restraint. Her thoughts churned guilt, fear, but louder, strong, a desire that drowned them. She let herself. Her feet moved, slow, deliberate, carrying her toward, her pulse a wild rhythm in her chest. Ethan watched, his eyes dark, holding a question that mirrored her. She stopped close enough to feel his warmth, to catch the faint cadence of his breath. Her hand lifted, bold now, reaching for his, her fingers curling around his. The touch was a spark, igniting her, and Ethan's stillness, his hand turning to meet her, his skin warm, a silent answer that pulled her under. The table was behind her, a steady anchor as she stepped back, drawing him. Their hands stayed, a tether in the dim, and Jessica's breath hitched as she leaned against the tables, the wood cool against her thighs. Ethan followed, his body inches from her, the space between them a fragile. Her free hand found his chest, fingers splaying over the steady beat beneath it, and the thread snapped. Their mouthed, a slow collision that deepened into her, his lips firm, tasting of salt and quiet. Jessica's senses, her body arching to meet his, the world shrinking to the press of him against her. His hands slid to her waist, guiding, and she sank onto the surface, grounding her as she pulled him. The wood creaked, a quiet witness to its coolness, a stark contrast to the heat building inside her. Ethan's breath was hot against his lips tracing the curve, and Jessica's thoughts fled, her mind a tide of sensation, his the way his hands moved, deliberate, reverent, her fingers tangled air, tugging gently, urging her body alive with every point of contact. His hands mapped her, slow or slipping beneath her shirt to find each touch a question she answered with a shift of her hips. The table held weight, its surface warming her, and Jessica felt exposed, full, yet fiercely. Her soul laid bare in the rhythm. His breath, a soft sound that sent a shiver, and she pressed her legs hooking around his, pulling him into her orbit. The forbidden weight of it, a line crossed, only sharpened the entity, stripping away shame to leave her body, her heart tethered to his. They were blood, she told herself 1,000 times, but the truth was somehow reduced to the language touch of share. Ethan's hands, one braced beside her, the other tracing her side, and Jessica's mind spun, caught between awe and disbelief. Each moment was a relation, unraveling years of her fears dissolving into the certainty of her senses sharpened, the faint creaks, the lamps, the way Ethan's scent clung to her, wood smoke, and something deeper, raw. His lips found hers again, slow, a quiet exploration that felt low, and Jessica's fingers dug into hers, anchoring herself as the time. Their rhythm was deliberate, hurried, a dance that felt both inevitable and each movement forging a bond she hadn't anticipated. The table groaned, its surface a map of theirness, and Jessica felt herself aid, her soul marked by the truth of the guilt flickered, a disco, but it faded against the raw connection blooming between them. She'd spent years guarding herself, sketching her desires in mutants, but Ethan was a vivid stroke, reshaping. Her body hummed, alive with every brush of hands, every press, and she let herself in it. Let the moment claim her. His forehead rested against hers, their breath